So, hey YouTubers, back with another book review, and now this time I will be covering the book Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. So anyway, if you've not heard of this book series, then you probably might want to end up hearing it from a friend or someone who has read the book. So basically, if you don't already know, this book, and the rest of the books in the series, by Laura Ingalls Wilder, is based off true events of Laura Ingalls Wilder when she was a kid growing up in the pioneer days, back over 60 years ago or something like that. So if you think it's fiction, it's not. It's based on real life, just to clear that up. I mean, you probably think, oh yeah, it's fiction because the illustrations and all that, so you might think, oh yeah, it's fake. No, it isn't. It's based actually on true events. It's just in, third person, where you actually get to see the whole time. It makes you feel like, if you don't know what third person is, it makes you look like you're actually witnessing it. Like you're actually there. Say at school and you witness, a fight happening. It's kind of like that, except you're not. But, yes. Anyway, Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder takes place in the big woods of Wisconsin, where Laura, as a young girl, I think she was about 7, I think, when this first book was published. I mean, they changed, from what I read on the net, apparently they changed, I think, the years of when she was growing up, so that way it makes it more realistic, in terms of, a really young, toddler remembering all this stuff, to make it more easier, to make it more real, So anyway, backstory. Anyway, like I said, she's about 7 in this book. And I think on the title, I think she's about 7, but anyway, it's about Laura, who lives in the big woods of Wisconsin with her family, with her, mom, dad, big sister Mary, and younger sister Carrie at the time. It was different back then for her, because you didn't call your parents dad or mom like you do now. I mean, back then they called their dad Pa, or the mom Ma. I mean, if you have you probably heard about it from your grandparents or great grandparents, from a really long time ago, because they lived that long before. So, if you have grandparents or great grandparents are still alive, then they might remember something back from their kids. Or pictures, that show them as kids, but I don't know. Either way, I don't know much about your guys' life, so I don't know if you have grandparents who are alive around then, but I don't know. Either way, it's about Laura as she grows up in the big woods of Wisconsin, and this is where mostly the book takes place, is that she's growing up in the big woods of Wisconsin near the town of Pippin. I think that's what the town was. I think it was called Pippin. Pretty sure that's what it's called. But anyway, she lives in the big woods where there's, a lot of trees, not that many people live in the woods, and so, plus, in the woods, your neighbors aren't really close to you, in a big city, say, New York or San Francisco. Back then, your neighbors lived, a couple miles away from you or something, if you think about it, this all took place over 60 years ago, so you kind of have to think of the time period of Laura and her family growing up, and they had to, do things that took a lot longer time than it does now, where we, put in the microwave and it's 2 minutes long. Nowadays like I said, we put things in the microwave and it's 2 minutes long. There's still stuff, that we do now that take a long time, but theirs took a whole day to make it, if you think about it. Anyway, it takes a place where she starts in the woods of Wisconsin, and it's basically, it goes through the daily, life of her life in Wisconsin, in the big woods, when she was growing up in the big woods. So basically, this is what mostly it's about. And shows her, growing up, learning how to, churn butter, making butter in that with big, tall butter maker. I forget what it's called. Does it even have a name? I don't even remember. The thing they turn butter on, does it even have a name? Let me know in the comments if it does have a name, because I would like to know what that big, tall thing was, the stick where you actually pound the butter in, like, if you know the name of that, but... Anyway, yeah, this was a good book. In my opinion, it was really interesting because it gave, like, an aspect of, like, how people in the pioneer days, lived, and how life was, just as hard for them back then as what is now. Excuse me. Because, like, you don't really think about how hard it was for people back then, like it is now. I mean, life is hard now, but if you think about it, life was hard since the beginning of, like, since we first appeared, like, on Earth and we evolved. I mean, life has been hard ever since, we came to this, we evolved on this planet and we lived on this planet for thousands of years. I mean, life has been pretty hard for us, so, yeah, we have been here for a long time. And if you like Laura Ingalls Wilder and you love this first book, there is a second book, which I do have, and I'll be covering half this book. But anyway, back to this book. This book, it's really good, like I said, because it takes place in the pioneer days, like over 60 years ago, and it's really interesting because you kind of get to learn the hardships of life a little bit back over 60 years ago or so. And so it kind of makes you think, oh yeah, it's difficult for me, but it was a lot harder for them too, because if you think about it, you didn't have, back then, in her time, you didn't have, automatic heaters, or automatic, a lot of automatic stuff and all that, like they do now, or maybe in 50 years now, we're gonna have a lot of automatic stuff. We didn't, like, back then, they didn't have all this technology like we do now. I mean, they had to do things the hard way of doing things, and it took longer for them to do things. Like, I remember, in the book, they, when they killed if you haven't read the book, there's, this one moment where they had to, do all these chores and all that, and it took different specific days to do it on. There was, I don't know, I forget what page it was on, but it was, this schedule of what specific days, what they did, and, it was, each day of what chore they would do, and what specific day, say, one day was baking, or one day was cleaning, and, all that, and, Sunday was church, or whatever, they did church, and they got rest on the day of, when they went to church, and so, basically, in Little House in the Big Woods, Laura and her sister didn't go to school, because there was not really a school, so, yeah, they lived near the town of Pippin, and they could have easily gone to the town of Pippin, and went to school later, but, they didn't. I guess they didn't have school there in Pippin, so, yeah, apparently not. So, anyway, yeah, it was pretty interesting. I mean, oh yeah, it's that's the doll she gets let on in the book, if you haven't read the book yet, but sorry if I'm saying too much, but either way. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, because, you get to experience how, she gets to bond with her little sister, and her mom and dad. I mean, you don't really get to see her bond so much with her little sister, because her sister, basically in this first book, is practically a baby or slash toddler in this book, so it's kind of you kind of don't get to see Laura bond much with her baby sister Carrie, as much as you do get to see her bond with her big sister Mary and her mom and dad. And so yeah, and so you kind of, at some point in the first book, you kind of see her hating on her brown hair, because everyone was saying how pretty her sister's hair was, because it was blonde, it was curly, and it was really gorgeous looking. And so you kind of get to see she is aware that people like her because she's older and all that. Yeah, and so you kind of see her self-doubting herself. But at the same time, you do get to see her parents saying, "No, you're pretty too, and we love you," and all that. It's this whole thing of her. And she's throughout the course of the series of all the books. I've not read all the books. I mean, I've not collected all the books. I don't really know how well she, matures and all that about the whole entire series. But I have a few of the books. So, yeah, that kind of explain how she matures. But she does mature a lot. As you continue reading this series, she does mature a lot throughout this series. If you're not with this series, this is a good series. This is the first book of not 8 or 9 books. If you're into a really long series, and people go, all in like bibliographies of real life people that I would. This is one of the few books I would recommend if you're into like pioneer type stuff. This is a good book to read if you're into pioneer stuff. It's like yeah. So this is a good book to read if you're into that. But anyway, yeah. If you're not into pioneer stuff, or like I said in the last video, classics, then that's okay. I will be covering other genres other than like this kind of book and classics, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, so good book to read if you're a kid. I mean, this is a good book to read when your kid's a little bit older than like I don't know, like under like 10 years old. I mean, this would be a good book to read if you're like a little bit older than like the Charlotte's Web book, because if you're reading Charlotte's Web is more like under the age of like 8 or something, but it's more like, yeah. But if you're into like, if you have a kid who's a little bit older, then this would be a good book to have them read because it's interesting. So yeah, and it's good. It's another book worthy of thumbs up. It's good. If you haven't read this as a kid before, or you haven't had a parent, read this to you because you won't enough to read it or something, then I would recommend reading this when you're older. So, yeah, I mean, there is, at some point, I think, a little bit of death, but not, like, intensified death, like, no. It's just basically, it means real life, but they keep it at a point where it's, like, not to the point of where it's, like, really, like, bloody or anything. They keep it to a point where it's like kid friendly and it's friendly enough to read to the point where your parents are okay with you reading it. So yeah, I mean, it's okay if you read it. I mean, it is friendly enough to read. So parents, if you're worrying about Little House on the Prairie because it's based off real life and everything, and you're worried about your young kids, finding like gory scene, like really bloody scenes in like this series, then don't worry about it. But if you're a parent and you've read the series before, and your kid has taken an interest in reading the series, then that's fine. But other than that, yeah, it should be a good book to read. So, yeah. So, I've read this as a kid. So, yeah, it's a pretty good book. Read it a few times. So, yeah, good book. I would recommend, sorry, that's my words there. Can't not speak right now. I would recommend this book to anyone who's interested in the series by Laura Ingalls Wilder right here. Yeah, so I would recommend this book to anyone who's interested. So yeah, stay tuned for another video if you're liking my series so far. So yeah, and if you want to leave a comment in the comments section below. And yeah, so see you next video, guys.